Hello there, Ray here, and today I will be explaining how you can resummon the Ender Dragon with 2 Ender Crystals, 1 Ender Crystal, or even 0 Ender Crystals. This is a collection of methods that I discovered during my testing over the course of the 1.9 snapshots. The typical way that you would resummon a dragon is by crafting 4 Ender Crystals, and then placing 1 Ender Crystal in each cardinal direction along the rim of the exit end portal. This would allow the Ender Dragon to be resummoned. The first method is how you can resummon the dragon with only 2 Ender Crystals. This can be done by placing an Ender Crystal in each of the corners of the exit end portal. Now when the game checks, you'll see that there is an Ender Crystal occupying each of the 4 directions. Since both these Ender Crystals are partly inside of these 2 sides here, they count towards the necessary Ender Crystals for both sides. This will allow the game to start the dragon resummoning sequence with only 2 Ender Crystals instead of the normally 4. The way that you can do this in survival easily is by using a water bucket and 2 blocks. So first you want to do is put your water bucket up against the bedrock piece in the center that is at the same wide level as the end portal blocks. So this bedrock piece right here, and then all you have to do is right click it with your water bucket. Then from there you can place down your block, and then you want to remove this end portal frame by coming along and placing your water bucket alongside of the dirt block. Then you can remove that one, and this will where your first Ender Crystal will go. Then you can do the same thing for the side over here. So you can start off by removing the end portal here. Then you can pick up your water bucket, place down your second block, then place the water against the block again, then remove it again, and then you can place in your next Ender Crystal. This will allow the Ender Dragon to resummon itself. The second method is how you can resummon the dragon with only 1 Ender Crystal. This can be done by saving the Ender Crystals that generate with the obsidian pillars, and then moving them from the top of the obsidian pillars down to the rim of the exit end portal. You can do this by using pistons to push the Ender Crystals onto the rim of the exit end portal. Once the Ender Crystal has made a flame block above the bedrock, you know it's in the right location. I made a video showing some easy ways how you can easily remove the Ender Crystals from above the obsidian pillars. There will be a link in the description to this video. You could just move one of these Ender Crystals into the corner here, but it's pretty difficult to get the Ender Crystal in the right location without having to remove some bedrock. So normally you would just use 2 of these Ender Crystals that come from the obsidian pillars, and then you can come in and use your single Ender Crystal to place it in the third spot here. This will allow the Ender Dragon to begin its resummoning phase. You cannot just push in 4 of the Ender Crystals that come from the obsidian pillars, because even if you get all the Ender Crystals up into the exit end portal's rim and in the correct location, the game will not actually check and see if these Ender Crystals are here and in the proper location until the player actually manually places down 1 Ender Crystal. So once the player places down an Ender Crystal, the game will then check to see if the Ender Crystals are in the right location, and if they are, then the game will start doing the dragon resummoning sequence. The player does not have to place his Ender Crystal near the exit end portal to update it, so the game will check that these Ender Crystals are in the right location. The player can actually place the Ender Crystal anywhere in the end dimension as long as the Ender Crystals around the exit end portal are loaded either as entity processing chunks or lazy processing chunks. And if the player places an Ender Crystals down while these are loaded, then the dragon resummoning sequence will begin. To illustrate that this actually does work, I have the 4 Ender Crystals placed around the exit end portal, and I have so that the fire blocks are not along the chunk borders, since the exit end portal is actually in the center of 4 different chunks. So the fire block itself is actually a chunk loader. This was told to me by Omegnex, and it's quite apparent in this test. So if you have this fire or any fire block near a chunk border, it will load the chunk next to it. So I have moved the Ender Crystals off of the chunk borders so that they're not causing any chunk loading. Underneath of the exit end portal, I have it marked out so it shows all the chunks in the area. And this is the center chunks here. Then I have a row of hopper chunk loaders that go all the way out into that direction. And then we'll go out there and then we'll put our Ender Crystal down, and it'll come back and it'll load up to here. And then I also have some chunk loaders that'll load these 4 chunks right here, which will load all the Ender Crystals above it. I also have some command blocks here, which will just say if these chunks are loaded as lazy processing chunks, as well as I have this armor stand going up and down, which will test and see if the chunk is an entity processing chunk. Now I'll just go out to the end of this pseudo lazy processing chunk loader, and then we can start up and see what happens. So now I'm out here at the end of the hopper chunk loaders, and I'm quite a ways from the main island. And from here I have the chunk loaders go all the way back to the main island, and you can see on the right hand side I have a scoreboard which is keeping track of which chunks are actually loaded as lazy processing chunks. and currently just the 4 chunks that are underneath of the exit end portal are loaded. And these are the 4 chunks that have the ender crystals underneath them. And the other chunks underneath of those, the numbers are not moving because they are currently not being loaded. And the command that was spamming in the chat, it was just saying entity processing chunks, and that one's not loaded as well. Now if you place down an ender crystal, you notice that there's no flame block underneath the ender crystal, as well as the scoreboard froze for a little bit. And when you see the ender crystal that does not have a flame block underneath it, this is just the ender crystal is checking back at the exit end portal and seeing if the other ender crystals are in the right location so that the dragon resummoning phase can begin. And after that check is done, then it comes back and places this flame block underneath the ender crystal, as well as the scoreboards start to move. Now you can see that in the chat, as well as the other scoreboards, they're all starting to move now, saying that all these chunks are actually loaded, and some of these chunks are even loaded as entity processing chunks. This is because when you start the dragon resummoning phase, there's a 17 by 17 area of chunks around the main island that actually get loaded, and some of those chunks are loaded as entity processing chunks, even though that there's no players near them. This just allows it so that when the dragon resummoning phase occurs, you cannot interrupt it easily. The chunks around the main island that are being loaded during the dragon resummoning phase stay loaded until the next autosave if there is no player in the area. Once the autosave comes around, it will start removing chunks that are not loaded by the player, and this will also remove those chunks. But since the dragon resummoning phase only takes 30 seconds to actually go through an entire phase, you would think that the dragon resummoning phase would actually finish and the dragon would be summoned by the time the autosave comes around. But this actually isn't possible. For some reason, the dragon resummoning phase actually does not allow the dragon to be resummoned until the player actually comes back into this location. Once the player comes back into this location, the ender crystals will start resummoning the dragon. So what will happen is that the exit end portal will regenerate, but none of the obsidian pillars will start regenerating. And then once the player comes back into these chunks, the obsidian pillars will start regenerating, and then they will finish, and then the dragon will be summoned afterwards. The way that you can have the dragon be resummoned with 0 ender crystals is by moving the dragon away from the main island while having it being loaded with chunk loaders. This allows it so that the game will delete the dragon, and then once the game has lost track of the dragon, it will then resummon a new dragon in this location. I showed this mechanic in my endstone and torch farm. I also showed how you can use this mechanic to get yourself the old ender dragon that will drop you 12,000 XPs and a new dragon egg. In the description there will be a world download to this world, so you can check it out in more detail if you have any questions about this world, as well as there will be links to all the different videos that I mentioned in this video. There you have it, how to resummon the dragon with 2 or 1 or even 0 ender crystals. So if you found this interesting, show me the like. If you'd like to see more technical Minecraft, subscribe, and don't forget to comment. Bye bye!